He said that we should go back to the old way of doing things. I don't think a lot of people will because people pledge their allegiance to convenience. You know, people like to, oh, damn, I was a bar. People pledge their allegiance to convenience is a bar. But it's true though. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of Find Your Formula Reacts. Now today we got another video here from the dog, the dude, the internet homie Jacob Whelan or Jacob Wellen. I dropped a video a couple months ago reacting to one of his videos, and he actually commented on it. It was like, "Hey man, great video, love what you're doing." And I commented on this video before reacting, saying, "Hey, I got to make a reaction to this." And again, he always showed love, so shout out to you, man. I really like the content that you're doing, and I really wanted to react to this video because I relate to it. You know what I'm saying? Feeling like an outcast, stuck in the wrong timeline. I definitely know what that feels like. And I think the reason for me is because I have older parents. You know what I mean? So I want to let him get into his talking points. I'm going to leave my commentary here. I'll leave the original video down in the description below if you would like to watch it without my commentary. But without any further ado, let's get into the video.
At this point, I'm convinced that I was born a century too late. And let me know in the comments below if you can relate to this, because it seems like the more time that passes, the less I can relate to the world and the people around me. And I don't think this is coincidence. I think there's a very specific reason for this. And I think the reason is because the people that were born between 1980 and 1989, I think we're the forgotten generation. We don't really fit in. We're not millennials and we're not Gen Xers. We're this weird in-between generation that kind of has a hard time relating to the stuff that we are surrounded with today, because our generation is actually the generation that ushered in all of the things that have taken over our daily lives. If you really think about it, cell phones, social media, the internet, our generation lived through that. And I would say that our generation is the last generation that is going to know the old world. And I think that's why it's hard to relate to the new world, because we remember what it's like back then. We remember the life without the internet.
Yeah.
And I will say that the life without the internet was a grand life.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I definitely don't know what life was like without the internet, but I do remember as a kid, the internet certainly wasn't as big of a part of my life as it is today. You know, the internet, it was kind of like something that was just kind of off in the distance. You know what I mean? Like you played internet games with your friends. I remember getting like Xbox Live. You had to pay $60 a month in order to have the Xbox Live, or like 120 for the year or something like that. That was as far as the internet went. Maybe the occasional MySpace and funny YouTube video, but you certainly didn't have a computer in your pocket everywhere you went. You know, I had like the little juke phone or the little slide up phone or the Motorola phone. My cell phone was strictly for calling people, and the internet was something that was at home on a computer that you had access to. It wasn't in my pocket, it wasn't in my car, it wasn't on a watch. The internet was just like an isolated form of some sort. It wasn't in every aspect of life. And I do think that back then life was simpler. I wasn't exposed to as much, and I didn't see as much. So I agree with that.
It was pretty fantastic. I mean, the way I was raised and the way my friends were raised and most of the people I know that are in my generation, it was like the Lord of the Flies, but with Nintendos and bicycles. It was freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Those were the days that we were running around outside all day long,
Yeah.
riding our bikes, getting dirty, getting hurt, doing a bunch of stupid stuff
Yeah.
that we would learn very hard lessons from. And those lessons would eventually shape us into the people that we would eventually become. Back in those days, I just remember being wild and free. My parents would cut me loose first thing in the morning. I would leave the house and I would not return until after sundown. And we didn't have cell phones, so there was no way for them to check in on us. They just assumed that we were okay and we would eventually come back home. And we always did. And that's just how life was. I grew up on a farm and both my parents worked. They would leave to go to work first thing in the morning, leaving my brother and I home alone pretty much all day long. And we ran the household. We were free range. We kind of did what we wanted. We came and go as we pleased. And our parents trusted us. And they trusted us, I believe, because we were properly disciplined. We knew that if we messed up, there was going to be a belt waiting on us when we got back home. And
I agree with what he's saying, but I also think one thing, though, too, the quality of people from the 1980s to now has definitely dramatically decreased, I'd imagine. All right, I wasn't born in the 80s. I didn't live through that time period, but I think that there was a different air in America at that time. You know what I mean? I think the quality of people now has certainly gone down the drain. I wouldn't want to just leave my kids at home and just let them roam freely because I've seen some of the things that have happened in life. Call me paranoid, whatever the case may be. It's not that I wouldn't trust my kids, I wouldn't trust other people around my kids. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that has certainly changed. You have more entitled people. I mean, you don't get to a world where you have men believing that they're women and should use women's bathrooms and stuff like that without the overall population like quality just dropping immensely and only getting worse as the days go on. You know what I mean? So yes, cool, your parents trusted you, that's great, that's awesome. My parents trusted me as well, but my mom was like the helicopter mom, and she had to explain to me, it was like, look, it's not that I don't trust you, I don't think that you're going to mess up, I think that the world is messed up, and I'm sending you out into a messed up world without any protection and any armor. That makes me a bad parent. I was like, that's actually fair. I kind of get that. So I don't know. I think that may be another reason why you feel like you don't necessarily fit in today's generation.
Still remember the day I started kindergarten. Our principal had a meeting with us in the cafeteria, and he told us point blank that if you misbehave, then we have a paddle and you are going to get bent over our knee and we're going to bust your butt with this paddle. And oh, by the way, it has holes in it so that it cuts through the air faster and it's more aerodynamic so that it can hit your butt harder and it will hurt worse. I still remember that. And that is 100% legit. That is true. That is how we were raised. And our generation is one of the last generations that knew that kind of discipline. Because nowadays, if you discipline your kids in that way, you can go to prison. It's a different world now. But again, we were brought up in the world.
No, I definitely agree. I think that discipline, that's the key word. That's why the quality of people has dropped. Because we're undisciplined. We're mentally and emotionally unstable. You have a lot of people getting raised by single moms, a lot of young boys getting raised by single moms. So they grow up, they go out into the world without any emotional control, without any emotional stability. That's the key word that he said there was discipline. You have a lot of people that are undisciplined, so the quality of people around you drop. When the quality of people around you drop, you can be raising great people, great kids, but you're putting them in an environment where it's not necessarily set up for them to win. Hence why you feel out of place because you're like, this is not how I was raised at all. This is not how we grew up at all. Like the stuff that y'all doing, mad weird, very, very weird stuff. Like I said, I have older parents. You know what I'm saying? My mom actually just turned 62 yesterday. So happy birthday to you, mom. I know I told you happy birthday and everything, but I don't know if you watch my videos, but if you do, mom, I love you. But yeah, how my mom and my dad raised me. First of all, two parent household. So you had the masculine and the feminine. You had the discipline, the structure, the order, but also the nurturing, the caring, and the feminine. So I'm thankful and I'm blessed for that. But a lot of people didn't come from that environment. And you get to see it and how they handle problems, the way that they move in everyday life is strange. I'm telling you, it's strange just how they process things and move sometimes. But he's 100% right. A lot of today's society lacks discipline.
Old, where we were going through that transition phase where all these things were being phased out, all the old ways of doing things. Another prime example of that, talking about school, is participation trophies. I grew up in a time where that didn't exist. You were either first or you were last. And that's how we were raised. And it bred healthy competition. It made you work harder because you knew that if you wanted to be the best, you had to train like the best. You had to put in the work. But today, you win no matter what. So what incentive is there to actually push yourself, to actually improve? And I would say that there's not much incentive at all. And maybe that's why people these days don't really have that drive. They don't have the ambition like we used to have back in the day. In school, I also remember the transition from...
Well, not only that, he's 100% right, but not only that, the ambition on the masculine side was demonized and punished for the longest time. You know, men were called toxic for wanting to go to the gym and win competitions and beat the person next to them and be the best and be the strongest and the biggest and whatever. That was demonized. You know what I'm saying? So not only was there no incentive, it was you're a villain for trying to win. It was punishment, not a reward. You were punished for trying to be the best. Even now, I know, like in some military services, they made it to where it doesn't matter what you score on your PT test, you're gonna have to do it twice a year anyways. Now, it used to be like if you scored below a 90, you would have to do 2 PT tests regardless, right? Regardless, because you're not on a watch list per se, but it's like you're not excellent. If you got above a 90, you only had to do it once a year. But now it's at a point where it's like, okay, even if you get above a 90, you still have to do it twice a year because the mental or the mindset was, okay, we want our people to be more fit, so we're going to hit them twice a year with a PT test no matter what. But now the people that scored above a 90 consistently, they're like, okay, well, I'll just get a 75, 70, whatever. I got to be back here 6 months anyway. What's the point of me even trying hard? Again, it's a little bit different from the participation trophy that he's talking about, but ultimately, the fact still remains. It's like, okay, well, what are we doing this for? Like, what's the reward? What's the big shebang behind it? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, all of these things tie into each other. You really get to take a step back and you look and see how society is. And you're like, I don't think that I want to be a part of it. And the thing is, too, like people will start calling you weird. People will be like, oh, man, he's the oddball out. He's strange. But here's the thing, being called weird in a normal society and that sickness is normalized. Being called weird in a sick society actually means that you're probably okay. Actually means that you're probably okay. It's just like when women call other women pick me's. Oh, you're a pick me, you're a pick me. But you listen to that type of woman talk, and you're like, I actually agree with a lot of her points. You're not mentally insane. So that's a good place to be. That's a fair point.
Full contact sports and full contact games and stuff on the playground to tag and touch sports and touch games because for some reason full contact sports and games were a little too harsh. So we had to soften ourselves up. Things have changed in a very drastic way, and we lived through that change. And don't get me wrong, there's other generations that lived through that change as well, the older generations. But again, we are the last generation to have experienced the old world. And all these things happened as we were being raised. And when things happen when you're in that developmental phase, it sticks with you. It's ingrained in us. And since we remember all these old ways of doing things, and now we're in this world where the old ways of doing things are completely gone, and we fully transitioned into this new world, it can be very hard to adapt to that, even after all these years. And it can be very hard to relate. And that's what I've found that I'm experiencing. And sometimes that causes me to want to just withdraw from society and just be here alone on my farm with my dog and not be around people, not be involved and not participate in this new way of doing things. And I can tell you for certain that when I do that, I am at peace.
Yeah.
And I think that's because of the way I was raised specifically, being on a farm and not being around all this stuff. Even as I was growing up, I was far removed from that stuff more than the average person, I would say, because I was in nature. I was outside.
Yeah.
I was playing in the yard with my friends. I was getting dirty. I was catching animals. I was hurting myself. I was learning all the hard lessons that would eventually shape me into the person I am now. And I feel bad for these kids nowadays that are being brought up in this new world that will never have the chance to experience that. And don't get me wrong, it is still possible to experience that way of living, but it's much more difficult because most of the population now are in cities, and the barrier to entry to get into nature is a little more difficult. And not only that, but it's also more difficult to remove yourself from technology and the new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
When you're raised on cell phones and social media and the internet, it can be pretty hard to distance yourself from that. And if that's what you know and it's what you love, maybe you don't want to. Maybe you're
Yeah, so that phenomenon is actually called the Internet of Things, right? Like I said, when I was younger, the internet was kind of like this isolated part of your life, but now the internet is in everything from the food that you eat, if you're ordering DoorDash, to the TV shows that you watch. There's a streaming service out from the YouTube videos, which is pretty much just another TV streaming service, like to the sports you watch. It's all integrated into your life. It's almost like forced. And the transition was so seamless as well. I remember the first ad I saw on YouTube. I thought my computer was broken. I didn't know what was going on. I was like, why is there a commercial on my computer? Like, that wasn't even a thing until it was. And then we all just kind of accepted it. Another thing too that he talked about was when he's out on his farm with his dogs, how that brings him peace because he doesn't want to be around people. And the first thing that I thought about with that is, oh, that's black fatigue. Yeah. That's black fatigue 101. I feel like that sometimes when I'm out around a bunch of people. It doesn't necessarily just have to be black people. But whenever I'm around a certain, like any group of people, I'm already feeling my social battery drain as it goes. Like, because they're talking about stuff that just doesn't matter. Like, why do I don't want to answer for how's the weather questions. Like, I don't care, dude. I don't care. And I know that I only feel like that because I have people fatigue, right? When people are talking to me about some stuff, I'm like, I genuinely don't care about this. Now, I have some friends that I talk to, and the conversations are actually meaningful. And I leave that conversation and feel like I either learned something, taught something, or both, right? But most people just don't have depth to them. You know, they have zero depth. They have nothing going on in between their ears. And it's like, I just don't want to associate myself with people like that. And you can tell based off of how they act. You know what I'm saying? You can tell based off of how they act, how they talk, how they move, just how they deal with life in general. The other day, I'll tell this story really quick and I'm gonna get back into the content. The other day I was door dashing, and as I was door dashing, I was in McDonald's, right? Place of the most intelligent people, McDonald's. Picking up a DoorDash, and there was only one lady behind the counter. The order was taking a while, but I was like, "Look, I'm door dashing." I communicated with the customer, "Hey, it's going to be a while waiting on your food." They said, "Cool." So I'm chilling. I'm on my phone, whatever. Three people walk in, and they're waiting for a while. They asked the lady behind the counter. They're like, "Hey, is it going to be a while, or can we get someone else up here to take our order?" And the lady behind the counter snaps back, and she was like, "It's only me. I'm running all three things, so I'm assuming the front desk, the drive through, and then maybe something else." She was like, "You guys can either leave or wait for me." Now, obviously, the three people that heard that, they snapped back immediately, called her fat. She was very fat. Called her fat, whole bunch of other things. Called her everything but a child of God, essentially, and then left the store. And then she was yelling at them. They were yelling at her. And I was just kind of in the middle, like, can I get my DoorDash so I can leave? I said all that to say the whole situation was like, I was just over it. I was like, you didn't have to do that. They didn't like it was just like, man, I should have stayed home. This dash ain't worth the $10 of like whatever this is going through it. You know what I mean? So I definitely feel that. Like there's some days where I just sit at home. You know, I sit at home, I'm productive, I'll clean up, I'll shoot some videos, whatever. But I genuinely find peace just being like, you know what? This is good. This is good and I'm okay with this. I definitely find peace just chilling in my backyard, in my zero gravity chairs, listening and reading a good audiobook, maybe something about stoicism, maybe the Bible, just chilling, enjoying being alive, me, myself, and I, you know, as opposed to being out, being around people, being up in people's face, the parties, the drama, the yik 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 key. I don't got time for that. And I'm not even 40, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm already fed up with it. So, 100% understand, and I can resonate with that.
Completely content and happy being in that digital realm. But for those of us who were born between 1980 and 1989, that forgotten generation, the feral children of this world that still remember the old ways of doing things, I feel that in large part, we do want to get away from that. We want to get back to the old ways of doing things because things were so much simpler.
Right.
And life was less stressful. We had a lot less worry. We simply didn't have access to all this stimulation and all these things that are competing for our attention. We were raised in a time where the internet came on a CD. They used to ship out those AOL discs, and you had to stick it in your computer and you would get like 30 days free. And it wasn't just the internet, it was dial-up internet, which worked off a phone line, and it was very, very slow. So if you wanted to load a picture, it would take you about 30 minutes. And that was only if somebody else wasn't on the phone or if somebody wasn't trying to call your house.
I remember that. I remember that. In the first house that my mom, and my dad lived in, I don't even think my little sister was born yet, or she had just been born. And my mom was on the phone. I don't remember what I was trying to do. I think I was trying to play a game on the computer or something. And she was on the phone, and I just remember that sound that it would make. Yeah, but that wasn't a very long time. That was like early 2000s when I was going through all that, when the internet was like the whole Y2K stuff was going on. When I remember all of these things, but I don't remember the disc. The disc, that's before my time. But I understand what he's saying though. The internet was like this isolated thing, but now it's everywhere. So, and it's not necessarily a good thing that it is.
Happened, then it would kick you off the internet, or your mom and dad would bust into your room and tell you to get off the internet so that they could use the phone. I'm still old enough to remember the old Atari, Nintendo, and Sega game cartridges that wouldn't work half the time So you had to pull the cartridge out and blow
Load
on it
it, yeah,
and then put it back in there, and
and
you had
pray
to
for
hit
the
the reset
best.
button 1,000 times, and eventually maybe it would work. I still remember looking forward to the weekend because we knew that meant we were going to go to Video Vault or Blockbuster and we were going to rent a movie that was on a VHS tape that you
Yeah.
had to please be kind rewind before you turned it back in, or else they would charge you like 50 cents or $1. I still remember back then, TV would actually shut off after a certain time. And I'm not talking about the TV itself would turn off. I'm talking about there was no TV on after a certain time at night, and it would not come back on again until in the morning. And when it came on again in the morning, it was infomercials, and no kid wanted to watch that. So what did we do instead? We went outside. We experienced the real natural world. And back in those days, we didn't have as many conveniences as we have today.
Yeah.
Living on a farm, we grew and produced most of our own food, so that meant a lot of work. We were in the garden all the time. We were hunting. We were fishing. If you wanted to do something as simple as change the channel on the TV, you had to get up and turn the knob. And in a lot of cases, you had to go outside the house and grab the 20-foot tall pole and twist it around. It had a big pair of channel locks on there, vice grips. You had to twist the pole so that you could turn the antenna and tune the station in. Your mom and dad would be inside yelling at you. Hold it right there. Turn it back a little bit. Turn it the other way. And you're out there cranking on what is essentially a massive lightning rod. And sometimes you would be out there in the middle of a storm trying to get the station to tune in enough where you could actually see the picture. And 99% of the time, you could never get it just right. So you would still have massive static on the screen. It wasn't about having full HD or, 1080p or 4K or any of that stuff. You were just happy to be able to see something. And the generation today, they wouldn't even be able to survive that because now everything has to be the latest and greatest piece of technology. Everything has to be high definition. And if the web page takes more than a half a second to load, or if whatever you're watching doesn't catch your attention in the first 2 seconds, or if there's even the slightest bit of pixelization, we tune out. We turn it off and we pitch a fit because everything has to be perfect now because that's what we've adapted to. But again, our generation, we remember what it was like to not have these things. And most of the time, I just want to get back to that. And for good reason, because back in those days, things were so much simpler. There was so much less to worry about, and your mind was free. That's the big thing. Your mind was free. You were able to think clearly. You were able to think for yourself. You didn't have all these external factors telling you what you should be thinking.
You know what's interesting about that? I've actually experienced this in my life. Well, with my job, I get to travel a lot. And I've lived overseas for the last like 8 years, right? There's actually some video, actually not on this channel, but I have other videos out where I'm not in the States. Like I'm not recording them stateside. And I've lived in these other countries and I've got to be like around the people and they don't have the conveniences that America does. You know, Amazon might get to you in 2 weeks. And we're talking about Amazon is still a convenient thing, but it's not next day shipping. You know what I'm saying? You can't go get DoorDash. You can't get food delivered to you in a timely manner. And I remember at first feeling like, man, this kind of sucks. This is an inconvenience. But as I got more and more adapted to that way of life, I really was able to think clearer. I didn't have all the distractions. I wasn't on my phone as much because most of the time I'm on my phone, it's for conveniences, right? Order something, get something, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, man, this is nice, to really feel through a thought or to really think about a thought further than surface level, first order, second order, third order consequences of thoughts. And that was a unique feeling. I remember when I was in Korea about 3 years ago, I was at this beach, Yosu. Yosu is beautiful. If you've ever been to Korea, Yosu, and if you've never been to Yosu, Yosu is pretty much like Busan. All right, so Busan is like Seoul. Seoul's the capital of South Korea, and Seoul has everything. Busan has everything plus a beach. Yosu has everything plus a beach, but minus the people. You can actually travel in traffic and not be waiting for 30, 40, 50 minutes. So I remember I was chilling in Yosu, had a long day at work, was just like, I'm gonna get a train ticket. I'm just gonna go to a city and just hang out, book a room, hang out. Got there, roaming around, walking around. People are looking at me. I'm the only black person for miles. They're waving at me and stuff. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I remember I sit on this park bench, and I'm on this park bench, and I just pause. I just take a minute to pause, and the sun is out. It's beautiful. there's fish jumping out of the water, and I'm like, oh, like this is what it probably felt like to be like an old human. You know what I mean? Like before the technology, even like further back than what he's talking about here. Like this is probably what it was like. Enjoying nature. This is better than scrolling on Facebook because I can feel something. I can. This is nice. And I just thought about things, and I ended up calling my mom and my dad and just talked to them and showed them where I was at. And they were like, man, I'm happy for you. So I've definitely experienced that in my life where when you don't have those distractions around you, it does open up your mind. You're I don't know like what that is. I guess maybe because you're getting real dopamine instead of cheap dopamine. It feels like you're actually living and not just alive. And it was beautiful. Yeah, it was genuinely beautiful. I miss days like that. Sometimes I try to recreate that here where I'm at now, but it's tough because there's a lot more people unless I go super early in the morning, right? But still, yeah, I know what that feels like. And if you've never experienced that, I think that every person should experience that at least once in their life, just to know what it feels like to sit with yourself and sit with your thoughts and not want to like pull all your hair out. Just to be like, you know what? This is good. It quiets those voices in your head a while. It's a beautiful thing.
Constantly distracted. But that's the great thing that we're overlooking is that that's the big thing. Your mind was free. You were able to think clearly. You were able to think for yourself. You didn't have all these external factors telling you what you should be thinking. You weren't constantly distracted. But that's the great thing that we're overlooking is that if we want that freedom and we want that clarity, all we have to do is get back to the old ways of doing things. We have to remove ourselves from this new way of doing things, this new timeline that we're on, and adopt the old things back into our lives. Get outside more. Get the sunlight on your face. Walk around outside. Make mistakes. Get dirty. Stick your bare feet in the dirt. Play with your dog outside. Play with your kids outside. Start a garden and grow your own food. Maybe bust out the old Nintendo. Play that instead of scrolling social media because back then we thought Nintendo and video games were going to destroy society, but now it looks like social media is going to. Things have changed. And honestly, I can't help but feel bad for the younger generation because they will never experience the old world like we experienced it.
Yeah.
Over the last 20 years, I've traveled all over this country, and I can tell you that I don't see kids outside playing in their yards, doing the things that we used to do when we were kids. They're not outside riding bikes, playing in the yard with their friends. They're not getting dirty. They're not experiencing the real world. And that's a real shame, and I really don't think kids understand what they're missing out on by not doing these things.
Yeah.
But again, that's our new world. And that is just how things are now. So if you feel like I do, and you're having a hard time relating and adapting to this new way of doing things, think about your childhood and how peaceful it was. And think about all the things that you're doing in your daily life today that you weren't back then. And of those things that you're doing, is there anything that you can stop doing so that you can try to usher in that peace and that freedom that we all used to feel, that drive and ambition that we all used to have, and more importantly, that clarity and the independence that we all used to feel because we were so much less distracted?
Yeah.
Our generation was a generation of brick cell phones. You remember these things?
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate to this. This is my first cell phone.
Oh man.
Bought this in 2003. Used to have Snake on this thing. I played this for like 10 minutes straight.
What's that? That Nokia joint? I don't remember. Again, that's a little bit before my time, but I know enough about it. I know it's kind of at the end of the video here. I do want you guys to go over to his channel and watch his stuff because he's 100% right. And the thing that's so dope about his channel, not super edit heavy, no flashy effects, just a guy sitting down on his porch talking to you about his life. You know what I'm saying? And he has like over 50,000 subs, I think. You know what I'm saying? And that's dope. That's beautiful because it's like there is still hope out there. There is still people out there that are talking about what's real and talking about real life and talking about the things that do matter and things that are actually important. And I don't know, man, it's refreshing to see and it's nice to see. But I also think that in closing here, he said that we should go back to the old way of doing things. I don't think a lot of people will because people pledge their allegiance to convenience. People like to, oh, damn, I was a bar. People pledge their allegiance to convenience is a bar. But it's true though. People want, they want what they want. They want it now, and big companies know this and they capitalize on it. They make it faster, cheaper, better. We live in the world of instant gratification. You know, like you said, we want everything now. And if we don't have it now, we're on to the next provider or the next thing that can give it to us now. And these companies know that, and they're killing the planet to make us these things happen even faster. I mean, from everything from the food that we order to the people that we date, we want everything done now. We want what we want, and we want it now. And when you grew up in a world where, you know, you had to be patient and wait for things, you did that because you had to. We no longer live in the world where we have to. You can get everything pretty much now, and people are going to do that. And it's tough because that does have negative effects and it does have ramifications that we're going to continue to pay for as technology and the internet gets more and more advanced. But again, as long as people are paying for that, they're going to keep cranking it out. They're going to keep cranking it out. And I can't say that I blame them, because if I owned a business, I would do the exact thing. I would do the exact same thing too for my bottom dollar in my next penthouse. So I'm not mad at it. I understand it should happen and I agree. But at the end of the day, people are creatures of habit. So it's going to be what it's going to be. But hey, guys, that is all I got for this video. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget, the best way to help out the channel is to watch another one of the videos that you see popping up on the screen right now. I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.